Alrighty, guys, so as I talked about in my last episode of Access Blockbusters Pod, I was away for a little bit, but we're back here now, and it's a good chance for me to catch up on all of these shows that we hadn't talked about over the last week and all the things that wrapped up. Wrapped up their runs. We talked about Shrinking Season 2 a little bit earlier on, but now it is time to wrap up Dune Prophecy. Better late than never, right? Better late than never. So let's talk about Episode 6 of Dune Prophecy, as well as the series as a whole, and where I think it could go for Season 2 and where I might be hoping for it to go in a potential second season. So this is going to be a full spoiler discussion for both Episode 6 and the entire series of Dune Prophecy. And without further ado, guys, this is it. If you haven't seen the episode or if you haven't seen the series, just make sure to save this segment podcast for later, wherever you were watching this, and then come back to it once you have, as we'll be talking full spoilers here. So what I'm going to do is just, mostly the same, but a little bit different here, where I'll go through the episode 6, a little more quickly, I think, than I usually do, because I want to save some time at the end of this segment to talk about the series as a whole, if that sounds good with you guys. So let's get into episode 6 here. We're going to go through this a little bit quicker, just because it's been a little bit of time since the season ended, and I wanted to talk about my thoughts on this episode, but then also talk about everything else. So we start out here with the flashback to the beginning of the series, right? We start out episode 6 in a very similar way to the way that we started episode 1, which is a young Valia Harkonnen fighting with Dorothea. And little do we know that in this episode, it's going to be a big sticking point here about the sisterhood fracturing. And I think that's, not to jump the gun here, but this is a very interesting thing, a very interesting setup for what a season 2 might look like, and some of the fractures within the sisterhood that are going on. Obviously with also Dorothea in Lila's body destroying all the genetic makeup and genetic, material and things that they had, information that they had at Unwalk 9. This time, however, we get more of a focus on Tula, because it seems like the series wanted to focus more on Tula as the series progressed towards the later episodes, and I think that it did so in various degrees of success. I think that there could have been more to develop Tula as a character a little bit more, because at the end of the day, it seems like they want to make the argument that Tula is the emotional centerpiece of this series, and because it's her connection to Desmond Hart and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it was super well executed, but I think that the effort that was being put here is well intentioned, and I think that is something that also could be an interesting sticking point based on the fact that at the end of the series, right, she was arrested by her own son. So I think that is also interesting. Also interesting to note that she knew she was pregnant. So we get a little bit more of the timeline here where she knew she was pregnant before. Because I thought this was going to be a thing of, she knew she was pregnant right after she killed Ori and all that kind of stuff. But it seems like a little bit later on that she finds out that she's pregnant. And then she has the baby, who turns out to be Desmond Hart. Also interesting here that, as Valia is trying to gain the devotion of the rest of the sisters, she says sisters above all instead of sisterhood above all. I think that's another way in which Valia is trying to consolidate power, something that she has, she continues to do throughout the entire series. We then flash forward to present day, and we have Tula talking with the sister and talking about the virus. So this bioweapon virus, it seems like it's feeding off of fear, and it's a kind of bioweapon, which, it's interesting, right? Bioweapons are an interesting thing in this universe, and Dune is always a franchise that has tried to balance the science fiction parts of it with the more magical elements of mystical elements of it, with the Bene Gesserit, with the voice, and then all these kinds of things. So, trying to balance that out here with the voice just being a completely mystical and almost magical superpower with a bioweapon virus is an interesting thing. And then the thinking machines, which come back later on in this episode in a pretty big way as well. I just think it's, it's neither good nor bad. I just think it's an interesting mix that the show is trying to do here. They reference the eyes again, those two godlike eyes that appear at the end of this, in these visions, which they still are not going to say who they are, which I think is a little bit frustrating because, again, you can have all these lingering questions about, what's going to happen in season 2, you're going to have to wait to find out. But I think too many of these questions is maybe to the show's detriment. I was saying the entire show was like, guys, you got to reveal who Desmond is. He's becoming less and less of an interesting character as each episode goes on if we don't know what his deal is and what he's trying to do. We still don't even know who put the thinking machine into his eyeball, and we don't even know why they did it. And I think that is honestly one of the bigger flaws of the series, is that we don't know why a lot of the characters are doing what they're doing. We don't know his endgame. We know that he, as he's talking with Kieran, we just don't know what his deal is here. And then later on, not only is Kieran arrested, but also Inez is as well. And now we get the plot is heading into motion here as Francesca, Francesca and is meeting up with Vali, and she's like, all right, we got a plan. And Vali is like, yep, I'm gonna get myself arrested. We're gonna rescue the princess, and then you're gonna kill Emperor Carino. Which, poor guy. I mean, hard to say poor guy because he made some pretty awful decisions, in this series. But Mark Strong seems like he's this kind of boy that's being helplessly pulled along by all these other people and being puppeted around, and it's just, you just can't help but feel a little bad for him. Can't help but being feeling a little bad here. So anyways, yeah, they talk about this, this whole idea that Carino was basically puppeted to be the emperor, and all the things that he was doing, he thinks he was doing by free will, but in fact, it was really the sisterhood that was trying to get him to do a lot of these things as well here in that regard. So yeah. Anyways, we get some more insight into Desmond Hart here, and in the flashbacks, Valia and Tula are talking about the fact that, your son could be something very special here. Maybe the first hints at something like a Kwisatz Haderach. I don't know the lore too well. I know that this is probably explored in the book somewhere else, but maybe the first hints at something like a Paul kind of character. Again, no one's saying how Desmond was made into a weapon, so they keep talking about the fact that he has all this potential and all these different things, but no one ever wants to explain exactly what's going on here. We get back to Lila now, and honestly, I have to say this: Lila, the whole Lila thing. I mean, she became more interesting at the end of this episode when she fully was Dorothea, because honestly, the whole flip-flopping of who possesses her body and her being restrained and things like that, I think the Lila subplot was the most confusing and the weakest storyline in general in the series to me. Again, I think when Dorothea takes her over, I'm like, okay, interesting, because it's not Lila herself that's interesting. It's just more the fact that Dorothea is back and she's now like, yeah, no, Valia ruined my life. She killed me, literally. She forced me to kill myself. And then she's like, okay. And then now she's taking over the faction of the Sisterhood in a very bloodthirsty kind of way. I think that's interesting, right? But I think that Lila herself as a character, not as interesting anymore. We head back to Salusa Secundus, where Natalia is basically making the power play here. And then we get Valia's whole being arrested scene where she's manipulating Heriko, and he's like, yep. She's like, yep, we puppeted you around, all this kind of stuff. And, she's planning her escape here. Right? She's planning her escape. We get flashbacks now, and we really get to see just how messed up Valia is as a character, because she murders all the acolytes of Dorothea when she was younger to basically get everyone else to fall into line here. Side note, by the way, some of these visuals I think are still incredibly striking. That's something that never fails in the show, even as I say it's sort of a mixed bag of a show, but the visuals, like, when she gets all the acolytes to she yells choose to them, right? And she makes them choose their allegiances. The shot at the end where the bodies are all fallen, and there's this little cone of light here cascading down the steps. I think that some of the shots in the series are really great. Really, really great. We get a scene here now with Francesca, whose part to play in here was supposed to be to kill Heriko, but she basically betrays Valia here. And Desmond also gets stabbed, but I guess Desmond can survive anything, so it doesn't really matter. Heriko kills himself, and then Francesca is killed by Natalia. So a lot of random deaths going on here, a lot of intrigue. We'll have to see what happens to the throne, because I think that is the big power play that they want to explore in season 2, if they do get a season 2 here. And yeah, if there's a season 2, I guess, another part of it will be that whole Dorothea versus Valia thing as well. So a lot of really interesting things here going on. Also with Dorothea in Lila's body destroying the breeding index, I think that could have also been an interesting thing as well. Then we get Tula, more insights into Tula giving up the baby of Desmond. One has to wonder what she could have done differently here, just given the fact that, Valia is sort of bloodthirsty for power, and you have to wonder, this whole series is kind of Tula's fault, because Desmond is a result. Who Desmond became is kind of a result of her giving up the baby. But at the same time, what else could she have really done is a question that I was thinking about here at the end of the day. We get a scene here where Valia then is confronting Desmond Hart, and the use of the voice is really terrifying here. She gets then, this whole vision of Griffin and all this kind of stuff, which, I don't know, this part of it, not as interesting to me. And I think that really what the show, because then they're starting to intercut between all these different things that are going on here. And I think at the end of the day, the biggest problem with the show was just that it couldn't pick a lane. It couldn't really focus on a main thing to be the brunt of the story, and it just wanted to do all these different things at once. And I think that really worked to the detriment of the show, in my opinion here. Then we get the revelation that Desmond's eye is the virus, and that a thinking machine here is in there. And I think that, that's again, interesting. I don't necessarily know if it was set up super well, but I think that if the show had more time to breathe, it could have been, especially with the whole question of, okay, who put it there? And also seemed like Desmond Hart had innate powers anyways, so is this just harnessing them? It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. Tula gets arrested, and then we end with the show with Kieran, Inez, and Valia on Arrakis, and then that's it. So really, here, as we transition now to my thoughts on the series as a whole, what I will say is that the series is not bad, I don't think, necessarily. I think that if you want to compare it to something like a Rings of Power Season 1, I think Rings of Power Season 1 was much worse than Season 1 of Dune Prophecy. If they do a Dune Prophecy Season 2, I would be very much on board with it, because I think that like I said, there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of subplots here that could be resolved in very interesting ways. It could be explored more in Season 2. For example, Desmond Hart. Where did he come from? What did he see with Shai Hulud? Who put the thinking machine in his eye? All these different things. The exploration of his relationship with his mother now that they've met, again, very interesting. Valia, Inez, Inez especially, right? I think Inez is the character that really lost out the most here in Season 1. I was immediately gravitated towards her character, with her position as the princess and her potential to be a Bene Gesserit's sister, but they really did nothing with her character in the season. So Season 2, positioning her to be the Empress, right? That could be really interesting as well. Obviously, Desmond Hart himself is interesting. Dorothea versus Valia. So you've set up a lot of very interesting things for Season 2. Season 2 has huge potential, but here's the key for Season 2 to be successful. It has to learn from some of the key mistakes of Season 1, in my opinion, and the number one thing it has to learn from is pacing, right? So I alluded to this earlier. The secrets, holding secrets and holding things from the audience is fine. It builds intrigue, it builds mystery, right? We all like, oh, what's going to happen next? We don't know. That's great. That's great to hold the audience in that way of being like, we don't know what's going to happen, so let's find out. But I think the show just didn't have enough time to flesh out the answers for a lot of these things. And it left, frankly, far too many of these things in the dark to be like, okay, I'm starting to lose interest, in some of these things that are going on here. And I think that's a big bummer here. On top of that, I think make this series 8 episodes and you have more time to explore a lot of these things that are going on here. Because I think that I talked about this in each of the individual reviews of the other episodes, that episodes 3, 4, 5 felt very rushed and felt like, yeah, we're not really giving enough time to explore all these different things with Ori and Griffin. This is a dense and vast universe, and you need time. You need time to really explain all these things. So look, at the end of the day, I on a thumbs up, thumbs down scale, I'm thumbs up, but not enthusiastically, right? I think that I would be much more excited for a Season 2 that is able to learn from the mistakes of Season 1. And I think that, this show in general just showed that there is huge potential with this universe, while delivering in Season 1 a show that is more or less a mixed bag, in my opinion. A lot of potential, but a mixed bag. So guys, let me know in the comments down below, have you finished Dune Prophecy, and what did you think about episode 6, the finale? I thought it was pretty solid, all things being equal. I think it's one of the stronger episodes. And what did you think about the series as a whole? Let me know in the comments down below.